In this lesson, we're going to talk about where the Verde River comes from, especially where the Verde River comes from as it goes through the Verde Valley. And the Verde Valley is this section of the stream's life between, say, Camp Verde and up around Sedona and back down to around Clarkdale. Sedona is right up here. And the answer is the Verde River comes from several different places, lots and lots of different places actually. And if you group all of the places that it gets water, all the little creeks and streams that run into it, all of the springs and seeps that flow into it, it's called the Verde River's watershed. Watersheds are important concepts because they're all of the area on the land that contributes to a particular stream or a river. So the Colorado River watershed is a very large area that has big rivers coming into it, like the Salt River and the Gila River and the Verde River, and all of those others contribute to its watershed, whereas Oak Creek's watershed is very small and just consists of that area kind of between Flagstaff and Sedona, and all the way to the Verde River. So watersheds can be big or small depending on the size of the creek or river that they serve. And the Verde River actually gets its start right up here by Paulden, Arizona, which is about 30 miles north of Prescott. And Paulden is a little rural community in Yavapai County, and right by Paulden there are a set of springs that are called Del Rio Springs. The Del Rio Springs come out of the ground. They get their water from a couple of places, but two of the big ones are the Big Chino Aquifer, which is a bunch of water that's under the ground to the north and west of Paulden. The Big Chino water is actually leaking out of the ground. It's overflowing out of the ground, and we call it Del Rio Springs when it hits the surface. And another place that it gets a lot of its water is the Little Chino Aquifer, which is down around Chino Valley and almost all the way down to Prescott. So these two contribute water to Del Rio Springs, comes out of the ground there, and then starts flowing east. And right as it gets out of Del Rio Springs, it's flowing, normally its base flow is about 20 CFS, or cubic feet per second. This is how we judge the flow of rivers and streams, in cubic feet per second, or CFS. So you'll see that term used quite a lot when you're talking about rivers. As the river progresses, goes on downstream from Del Rio Springs, it gets all the way past Perkinsville before it gets any more water than it had at the very beginning. So that 20 CFS up here at Del Rio Springs, by the time it gets to Perkinsville a little farther down, is probably down to about 15 CFS because of all the plants that have used up some of the water and evaporation along the way. And no other springs or seeps contribute water. So this section of the river, this 24 miles of the river, is called a losing stream. So losing streams are streams, obviously, that lose flow as they go downstream. And then right after Perkinsville, maybe 5 miles downstream from Perkinsville, you get to a place called Mormon Pocket. And Mormon Pocket has a number of little springs right there in it that add more water to the Verde River. So from Mormon Pocket all the way down to where the Verde runs into the Salt River, it's a gaining stream. Gaining streams are streams that actually pick up flow as they flow along their course. And the reason that it's a gaining stream, is because of the creeks that contribute water to it, and also because of a whole bunch of little springs and seeps that are right along the river in the Verde Valley. Some are small, some are large. Springs like Shea Springs that are right by Tabasi Marsh over here, or bubbling ponds, where Oak Creek picks up some of its water. And after Mormon Pocket, the first big creek that comes in is Sycamore Creek, so it adds more water to the Verde River here. Oak Creek, just down from cottonwood flows into the Verde River and makes it a little bigger as it goes. Then right above Camp Verde, you've got Wet Beaver Creek. Then below Camp Verde, you've got Clear Creek. And each of these creeks contributes more water to the river, but also a lot of groundwater is just leaking out of the ground and contributing to the flow, to the point that below Clear Creek you're running at about 110 CFS base flow. So let's talk just briefly about base flow. It's an important concept. The base flow is the flow of the river when you don't have any runoff from rainstorms or floods or anything like that. So the summer base flow is the low point of the river for the whole year, and it'll often run at base flow, summer base flow, for several months during the summer. And base flow in Clarkdale, for instance, is about 60 CFS. It's about 110 down here. It's about 20 up at Del Rio Springs, so you can see that it's gaining water all the way along here. In the next lesson, we're going to be talking about where the ground gets this water that leaks out into the river, how it soaks into the ground, how it travels toward the creek, and what we can do to affect that flow, both positively and negatively. That lesson is called Groundwater and How It Gets to the Verde River, and you'll be able to look it up wherever you found this one.